Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ambitious Broker. Today I have an interesting guest, Jim Remley, who is a man who started his real estate career at 19 years old and within 5 years started his own company. The company then went on to about 17 offices, I think the largest real estate company in Oregon at the time, or certainly one of them. And that company was sold. He's gone on and got involved with another company, which he's now taken from very small to, again, pretty large again, one of the top 500, I think, offices in the country. And he also does a lot of coaching. He coaches with owners of companies, managers, real estate salespeople, and basically 35 years of a lot of experience, a broad range of experience, which I'm always interested in. He's deeply involved with the association. He's been a speaker there, an author as well, and so forth. So sit back, if you will, and watch Jim and I as we explore some of the things I think that can be a big help to you in your career, and some insight that comes from a very knowledgeable and very broadly experienced background. So enjoy. Okay, Jim Remley, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, Roger Hance here, and thank you for being part of Ambitious Broker. I love ambitious people. I think you probably do too, right?
Absolutely.
So much easier to work with, you know. You get motivated people and so forth. And so I know we don't have a lot of time together. I promised I'd get you out in less than 3 hours. So let's see if we can. Let's see what we can accomplish here. But I'd like to take just a minute and tell people who we're talking to, and
Sure.
help me out here, because we were just talking a second ago. And you've been around for about 35 years, I think. You started
Yes, sir.
started 19.
19, yeah.
and
Back
then
in 1989.
1989. And
Yep.
you know, I told you I'm embarrassed. I started in 74.
Wow.
It's ugly.
Wow.
It's an ugly thought. It's an ugly thought. Anyway, so yeah, you started, and then you sold for a number of years, 4 or 5 years, did really well, 150 transactions per in some cases, and you actually started teams early on. One of the first people to start doing teams.
Yes, sir. One of the first in Oregon.
And we're going
sure.
to talk about that some, because I think that's an interesting dynamic today.
Yeah.
Has been for a decade, I guess, or so. But then you also have been deeply involved with coaching. You've written some books.
Yeah.
You're coaching both salespeople and owners and managers.
Yep. Love it. It's my specialization is coaching people on recruiting and retention. So I'm excited to help people with that.
Start a big company, or started a small company, made it a big company.
Started a very small company, me and another guy.
You and another guy, similar again to my background. And then you sold that, and you re-entered the brokerage business as well in some leadership role. I'm not sure I got that quite clear, but you're back in it again. You're interacting with people and helping build another company up, so it's quite a background.
Thank you.
Deeply involved with NAR, I guess. To what degree are you involved with the association? Because we are going to talk about that for a minute or two.
I taught for NAR for 10 years. I taught all the designation programs. REBAC was the big one. I taught the ABR class, real estate professional assistant class, and the seniors class, so the senior certification class.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we started Ambitious Broker, because I've told the story before, because I had a mentor that actually became really important in my life. I mean, literally changed my whole life. Because I called him up one day and I said, "Hey, can we have lunch?" And he said yes. Became one of my best friends. He was probably late 30s when I was 21. I was door knocking and met so many people at the door that kept saying his name. It drove me crazy. I went back, called him, and I said, "Can I buy you lunch?" He said, "Sure." And we became friends basically forever. And so I've kind of jokingly said Ambitious Broker is lunch with people that you would never have a chance to have lunch with. And it's with someone like yourself. You know, we have a lot of icon type agents, some people that have been tremendously productive from around the country. But I like and the reason I wanted to have you on is because of the breadth of your experience, having sold, having been involved with companies, also having a background with the associations and so forth. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to narrow us down to talking just about the agents and talking to the agents. And I want to know, I heard you talking in one of your other shows that I'd seen, and you were talking about per person productivity.
Yes.
And I found that very interesting because this isn't a per person productivity industry anymore.
Right.
And I don't have to tell you that.
Yep.
And when I first started my company, I kind of did the opposite of what you did. I didn't hire new people at all because I didn't think I was good enough at it. There were people who just did it better than me. And my goal was, let's take someone that's doing pretty well and let's specialize in bumping them.
Well, that's the right approach. It took me a while to come to that realization, but you figured it out early.
Well, you told me that, and I went the opposite direction. When I felt like I could actually build a good training program, then we did go back, and we've had a lot of very successful people go through that program. But either way, you're talking about taking someone that's at a certain place in their life and trying to help them get someplace else that they want to get to. So I'd like to start with just your advice to someone who's let's pretend like they've been in the business for a while and they're not hitting the kind of numbers that they want, or they'd like to go from one place to the other. And I know you had mentioned in one of the videos that clarity. You used the word clarity, which it stuck in my brain a little bit. Maybe you could share what you meant by, step one with someone is let's get clear.
Yeah, let's get clear. Have clarity. I think clarity is underrated, and that's something that we all have to really understand. Is that you can't hit a goal you don't set in and set it in a way that it's super clear for you. I think when you talk to most agents, they'll come up with a number just because they feel like they have to, and you'll say, "What do you want to do?" And they'll say, "I want to close 3 million, but I want to close 5 million. I want to close 10 million. I want to close 30 million." But when you dig deeper into that, and you say, "Well, why do you want to close that?" And the why behind the number is really where you're going to get to clarity. And having that clarity behind the why is so important. And everybody's why is a little bit different. When we all got into business, we had a why. Sometimes we'll get detached from it. But the why is what the money buys you, right? And so why are you doing what you're doing? Because having a production number will not get you up out of bed at 5 a.m. every day. It will not get you to the gym. It will not motivate you to go knock on doors or get on social media or do videos or do any of those other things. Your why and having clarity about why you're doing what you're doing, that's what's going to get you up in the morning.
I agree with you. So let's talk about it. You've had a lot of agents. You've sit down. I say to people, particularly in the association sometime, sit down in front of an agent who has got to pay their rent and they're struggling and they're wrestling with being in the business or not. And this clarity thing starts to pick up, and you can dig real deep and suddenly find out that they haven't been real clear with some of that. So I heard you talk about, and I use different terms, but I called it, start stringing together some victories.
Yeah.
And you termed it simple goals or simple things at first. Do you recall that line of thought?
Yeah, I mean, you want to have you want to create some wins. I mean, early wins. I think daily wins are super important. I coach a lot. I coach a lot to having non-negotiables, and I think as an agent, we are given something that's incredibly dangerous, which is freedom. And so, when you're working for an employer, they tell you what to do, and in exchange for you doing that, you get a paycheck. And as soon as you get in the real estate business, they say, "Hey, you got your real estate license now. You're free to do what you want." But most people are not self-directed. Most people are not having that level of self-control to say, "Oh, I need to actually get to work and do the things that are necessary." So what I encourage my team to do and my coaching students is to have 5 non-negotiables. What are the 5 things you have to do every single day, come hell or high water, regardless of your emotional state, regardless of the weather outside, regardless of the politics, regardless of the time of the year? What do you have to do every day to win? And when you knock out those wins, now you have permission to go do something else. Because what happens with most agents is they start squirreling and they see something on the internet, on social media, and they're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to go do that." And they get lost in secondary priorities and they get off the ball.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like you said, you hear too many buzzwords, too many faddish things. So, and it's funny, we think appear to think a lot alike. You have to wake up every day and get in the habit of winning. So,
Yep.
it may be the first thing you do to win is you turned off the alarm clock, right?
Yeah.
That's a victory. It's like me going to the gym. I tell people if my car gets to the parking lot, it's a victory.
Hardest part, the front door.
Right. Yeah. Get in the gym is a whole different thing. It's a whole nother level. But so what might be examples of that for someone new? I'm trying to get back on track with my business right now, and I need to get some clarity. What would you recommend is the way to set up some victories?
Well, one of the things that we talk about in our coaching a lot is if I was going to open up the hood of your business and look down at your business, the engine of your business, everybody's engine of their business is the same thing at a top producer level. And you hit on it early when we were talking here just a minute ago, but it's your sphere of influence. It's going to drive 70% of your business. And the size of that sphere is going to drive your success. So if I've got 100 people in my sphere and we have a 10-to-1 ratio in this industry, for every 10 people in your sphere, you average one closed sale a year, assuming you're talking to them 20 to 50 times a year. Now, I have another 30% of my business I got to get somewhere else. But until you fixed the sphere of influence issue, you have no business doing anything else until you fix that. So for me, we coach to something called the 5x5, which is every day I'm going to reach out, spend an hour a day in uninterrupted lead gen. And during that hour, my first focus is on my sphere. And that means I might make 5 calls to my sphere, send 5 emails, send 5 texts, send 5 video texts. Invite 5 people to some event I'm doing, or invite them to lunch, breakfast, dinner, drinks. And when I start doing that 5x5, trying to do 5 things in 5 different kind of modes, I'm going to start to win really, really fast. And if I can check those off every day, I'm going to crush it. In 30 days, my business will transform.
Right. Yeah, I call it Rogers Real Estate Rules. Rule number 1, your income is directly proportionate to how many people know you, like you, trust you, and know what you stand for.
100%.
So, and that's the reason for people. I've noticed that, I actually wrote the very first CRM system back in the 80s. And we had the experience of trying to get people to get engaged with this. But the whole motivation was that you there's a certain point in time to where you need to be organized in your approach to follow-up.
Yeah.
If I have
100%.
one person on one 3x5 card, it's pretty simple. If I have 100, it gets more difficult. And if I have 1,000, I better know what the hell I'm doing, right?
It's impossible. Yeah.
So you're saying let's start simple. Let's take 5 things, make it simple. If it's making 5 calls, then make 5 calls.
Yep.
And
exactly.
And go home a winner.
Yeah. And I would also say that, the attitude about your sphere has to change. You have to look at your sphere of influence and say to yourself, what's going to motivate these people to actually send me referrals? Because when you talk to agents, they're like, I don't get any more referrals out of my sphere, so that's why I do other things. And the reality is when you talk to high level agents, people doing 50, 60, 70, $80 million a year in business, you say, tell me about your business. Inevitably, they're going to say, well, I just listed my buddy's house. I just sold my friend's house. They refer to their sphere of influence, not as, people in a CRM or as clients or as customers. They refer to them as friends. And so that change in mindset is what is going to unlock agents' true potential and saying, oh, I've got to treat my database as potential friendships, and I've got to elevate those relationships to friendships. And when I do, that's when I'm going to crush it. And so our whole strategy is around elevating relationships up the ladder to friendships. We go from D to C, C to B, B to A.
No, I think it's a great perspective, and I think you're right. And that the whole idea is I'm not going to keep a lot of friends if I don't communicate with my friends. As soon as I drop off, my friends are going to stop loving me, And
yeah, we're all fading to black, right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to say to and still do actually to people that I coach, and that is that clients never take a how to treat the broker class. So, I expected that I would start doing a lot of business and people would start referring you, and then realizing, well, they do if you ask them to refer, or if you remind them that you're open to that, or if they were happy. And do you have some regimen that you speak of in terms of that building process? I want to take them from someone I know to someone who loves me.
Yeah. Well, we want to build raving fans. There's a great article turned into a book about it's all about the 1,000 true fans. And so when you have 1,000 true fans, your business will be unbelievably good. And so the question mark is, how fast can we get to 1,000 true fans? And the simple method of this is the average American has 27 conversations a day. That's the average. As salespeople, we should be having far more than that, but let's say it's 27. Let's just say we're the average American. So if we can just convert one of those conversations every day into somebody we're adding to our spheres of influence, just one a day, and in a working year, that's 220 days in a working year. Take out holidays, take out weekends, everything else. We're adding 220 people a year to our database. And with 4 to 5 years, we're going to have that 1,000-person database. We're going to have an incredible business, probably closing 100 to 200 transactions a year. But it's all about the incremental consistency. What we're at war with as agents and as brokers is consistency. We can all be motivated for a day. We can be motivated for a couple of days. But to do something every single day, that's the magic. That's what we have to do.
Are you a teacher of measurement?
Absolutely. I think you got to track what you're doing. You're tracking. We use a tracking form. We call it our daily dashboard. And we recommend that our students track the number of hours prospected and then exactly what they're doing every day. Every single thing, social media, thank you cards, notes, Popeyes, everything that they're doing. And then we track results as well behind that so we can see our progress.
Yes.
If you don't measure it, you can't improve it.
That's the old saying, right? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Can't manage it. That's right. Yes.
Well, okay. It's difficult. I have found that people have a really difficult time of writing things down and keeping track of this stuff. It's interesting though that every baseball card has every at bat for every year of a person's career, every hit they made, every strikeout they make. You go to the gym and you keep track of your weights and you measure how much you go up and down. You lose weight. You start by get on the scale at first to know. It's so logical. What makes it so difficult, you think?
I think people tend to not want to be accountable. I think that's the ultimate thing. And unfortunately, as salespeople, we have to have accountability because if we don't, we're not going to have a business. And so it's hard for people to be self-directed. Most people are not. And so that self-direction, the first part of self-direction is being accountable to yourself because you're the CEO and president of your own company. First person you got to be accountable to is to yourself. Here's one thing I recommend everybody do, and that is to write a job description for yourself. So here's an example. What I give out to my coaching students, I'll say, listen, act as if you're going to hire somebody tomorrow morning and you're going to pay them $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year. And you're going to pay them based on their performance, but you're going to pay them $500,000 a year. So what would your expectations be of this $500,000 a year new team member you just brought on your team? Would you expect them to be at the office by 8 a.m.? Would you expect that they work till 5, 6 p.m.? Would you expect that they have a CRM, a listing presentation, a buyer presentation, that they're active on social media, that they're using video, that they're using a pre-listing kit, that they have a marketing plan? All these things that we would, of course, expect if we were going to be paying somebody $500,000 a year. But how many of us have that same expectation of ourselves when we want to get paid $500,000 a year or $1 million a year? You want that 6-7 figure income, you got to act like a 6-7 figure employee, being your own best employee.
Yeah, I always enjoy going to a restaurant with some salesperson who gets antsy with the waiter or the waitress. And I'm thinking, boy, we should be so difficult on ourselves, right? Call me back and do those kinds of things. So,
100%.
So if with people that are starting new today, now when you started in the business, you had companies that probably did some marketing, did some advertising. They really helped seed your beginning. You had floor time probably where you'd pick up a call and so forth. And none of that exists anymore.
No.
And yet that was an important piece of really getting seeded and started. You get some transactions going and so forth. And I think it's probably one of the big reasons we have teams today. We've had to have a way to supplement that lead generation, so to speak. What are you telling someone that's brand new? What first of all, you had suggested let's get our sphere in shape.
Yep. Well, kind of going back in time, I know you started when you were 20. I started when I was 19 in the business. None of my friends were buying real estate. They're all going to parties and everything else. They're certainly not in the market to buy or sell real estate. So when I started, I had a lot of friends. I lived in an area for 20 years, but no one was doing business with me as a real estate agent. Plus, you look like a 19-year-old kid who's going to trust you with their largest financial asset. So people say, well, how did you go from no business to doing 150 listings in your second year and top 1% and all this? And for me, I had to model the top performers of my market. I quickly figured out what I needed to do was focus on something I could control, what I would call now business. So now business was for me at that time was for sell by owners, expired listings. So the two things I hit really hard. And then I focused a lot on absentee owners and mailings. Absentee owners were a huge advantage for me because these people would never see me. They lived in another state, and they just would rely on my conversation, and I have a good conversational voice, and I was able to talk to people, and I did a tremendous amount of business, tens of millions of dollars in sales in my first couple of years, just as a result of absentee owners, BizBos, and expired listings.
And you did that largely through mail?
It's an interesting story about the mail really quickly. When I started, it was pre-computers, which is hard for everybody to believe, but you came from that same background. But when I went to the local county and I said, I want a copy of all your records so I can start doing some mailings, it was all on microfiche. They hadn't put it on the computers yet. So I hired a young gal to come into my office, bought her a modern computer back at that time, a 365 computer that, is a 80K thing, you barely any memory. Had a DOS version of Excel. We bought her a microfiche machine. She hand transferred all the data into Excel, DOS Excel. It was like 15 hard disks back when we had hard disks. And so, yeah. And so we had computerized the database in our county before anyone else. And when we started doing mailings based on that, we had an absolute gold mine with that. And some people talk to me about technology today being so complicated. And every time anybody says that to me, remarketing campaigns and all the high tech things we can do with AI now, I always say to them, the harder it is, the better. Because if it's hard, no one else is going to do it. If it's complicated, no one else is going to do it. Dig in, figure it out, make it happen, right? And when you do that, you're gonna win because most agents are super lazy. So it's an advantage. Look at this as an advantage.
In fact, it's one of the things that I talk about with this sphere development again. And that is that. No one's going to do business with you if they don't know you. So it's pretty logical that let's get to know someone, right? And no one gets to know you real well if they can't talk to you. And so my philosophy has always been get them on a regular schedule, just calling them. I mean, it's cheap. It's actually free to give them a call. Everything else costs money,
Right.
It usually people are doing the things that are easy, like emailing and stuff, because it doesn't cost money. There's no rejection involved. And I think that's back to your mindset about Sphere that's part of it. I think is to say, well, no, I've got to let these people know who I am, and I've got to communicate, and I've got to do it with some consistency and frequency, like you'd mentioned. Right.
Yeah. And I think, it's a combination. Most agents are afraid of the phone. So if you can do what most agents aren't willing to do, you're going to win. But also adapting with the times. I mean, texting and video texting is super important. And I will say the most underrated thing that 99% of agents are not doing is remarketing on Facebook and Instagram, meaning you're putting an ad not out to the general audience because nobody cares about you in the general audience, but you actually taking your own database, loading that up as an audience into Facebook and Instagram, and putting ads, putting $1 a day behind it, $5 a day behind it, so that your ads, your face comes up in front of your own sphere every single time they're on their phone, when they're on Google, they're seeing you and they're like, wow, Jim is everywhere. That's also just another way you marriage technology with the old school stuff that we used to do.
Well, I like the term you use of audience, because I use the same term. And that is that, and one of the things that I will say sometimes to people is, if you came up with the greatest idea in the world tomorrow, where do you start? Yeah. What is your audience? Who are you going to go give your ad to? And by the way, what can you afford to do? Can you afford to go mail everybody in the city? Can you can you afford to do radio and TV shows and stuff like that? Probably not. So build that audience, right? So you've got someone to talk to. Okay, so I get my sphere together, and I've got a regular plan to communicate. In fact, we did a little math problem the other day here, and we broke down 1,500 people. You'd mentioned 1,000. We say 1,500, you're guaranteed to make $1 million a year. If you'll be systematic and you'll be consistent. And so we figured out that if you said, well, I'm going to talk to 500 of them every 4 months, just like clockwork, just like farming. And I'm going to take the next 1,000, I'm going to break them down, and then I'll get down to about 50 people that I'll talk to probably once every couple weeks, depending on how hot they are, right? And based on our breakdown, it was 4 days a week that you would talk to 40 people. And you would cover 1,500 people. So if you think about making $1 million a year is a 40 phone call a day job, doesn't look so bad.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah,
exactly.
In fact, one of my agents one time said to me, I was sitting here watching at home one day, and I was watching the postman come by my house. And he said, it occurred to me, if I just did what he did, I would make 10 times as much money as him.
Exactly.
And he called a postman, and he started farming religiously, and he retired a multimillionaire. So just perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
How are you feeling about farming today? Geographical farming.
I'm not a huge fan of old school farming, but there are versions of farming that still can be very effective. One is using AI. So if you use some AI tools, there's a ton of them out there, and I take my farm area and I feed it into the AI tool, it will kick it back out to me and say, okay, based on 500 data points that we know about these people that are in the farm, here's the 50 most likely people to sell in the next 12 months. And it's highly accurate. I mean, it's very, very impressive stuff. So now I can focus my energy on the 50, the 100, the 200 that it's identifying. So that's one thing. But I tend to do something I call cluster farming, which is a whole different kind of concept. And cluster farming is based on something that just happened. And I'll give you an example. Everybody's generally, if we're agents, we're out showing property every day or every week. So if I go out and show a house and I come back to the office and I put a pin on a map and I say, okay, I just showed that house. I'm going to use the 5-10 rule. 5 houses on either side, 10 across the street, total of 20 properties. I'm going to call those people or text those people and say, hey, this is Jim Remley. I just showed your neighbor's house. I know. I'm sure you've seen it for sale. House didn't quite check all the boxes for my buyer, but they love the neighborhood. I got a crazy, crazy question. Would you guys consider selling for the right price if we'll give you plenty of time to find your dream home? Now this is tied to something a trigger event, something that actually just happened. There's authenticity to it. There's urgency to it. And it's a relevant, makes sense conversation rather than me just cold calling people and saying, are you interested in selling?
I love it. Yeah. It's great credibility.
Credibility.
I say to people that, we're in a business where you sell credibility and you manage information, and everything you do to create creativity, the sense of sincereness, the sense of, you're a legitimate person. And when you can say to someone, I just wrote this offer, like you're saying, I love that, and it failed, it didn't happen. I would like to say to them, I have this condition. They wrote an offer, didn't do it. Would you like to talk to them?
Yeah.
Not even do you want to sell them. Would you just like to talk to them?
Right.
And it's very credible. So I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I've had some, the last 4 people that we've done this ambitious broker episodes with, I haven't even published yet. And it's interesting that they all are really, really, really committed to what they call hyper-local marketing.
Yes. Yeah.
And they feel like getting deeply engaged in a community. I don't know what it's like where you're at, but in Southern California, that multiple listing service has gotten so widespread. You can access from Los Angeles, you can access MLS information in Sacramento.
Yeah.
For what reason, I have no idea, but they do it. But what it has done is it has made people travel further, and as a result of that, they lose some of that local knowledge and that local relationships. So, I think I'm still they've been very creative in the stuff that they've done to get engaged with. The last lady that we did will be published, Paige Schulte, and she's gone as far as to actually hire video crews to go to every school in their area, interview teachers, interview the administrators, and as part of her listing package, she plays the video of these people, whichever the appropriate local school for that house she's selling. I mean, it's crazy detail, right? Crazy detail.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and to your point, you combine or compound the audience opportunity. You're taking a lot of local listings as opposed to spread out all over the place.
Well, that's the hyper-local aspect. I talk about, this idea that, Zillow is our number one competitor in every market. So when people hear the word real estate, what do they think of? And the vast majority of Americans would think of Zillow or Realtor.com. And so that's who we're competing with. It's not Remax or Keller Williams or EXP or whoever, your local brand is. It's really you're competing with Zillow. And when you think about that, how do you win against Zillow? The only way you win against Zillow is you go hyper-local, because Zillow can't compete at a hyper-local level. You can compete at a hyper-local level. So that's how you win what I call mind share, that you're at war for mind share. So when people think about real estate, they're like, oh no, Roger's the dominant guy in this neighborhood because I see his face. I see him everywhere. He's really active in the community, super charitable. I'm going to do business with Roger, not Zillow. And that's where the war is.
I agree. I agree 100%. In fact, the whole idea is that there's information you can gather that they can't gather. I mean, exactly. They're clever as hell, don't get me wrong, and they have lots of money, but that's a victory they can't win, is your ability to get local information about, simple stuff, the condition of a house. Does it have a view, doesn't it not have a view, and, little things like that. So what else would you encourage someone to do from a prospecting standpoint in the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, I think you've got to say, what are my strengths as an agent that I'm bringing to the table? So you might be a great negotiator. You might be great at social media. You might be great at, networking, being involved in the charities in your local community. Figure out what your strengths are and lean into those strengths and understand that we can fill the gaps where our weaknesses are, but let's lean into what we know we're good at and really go deep into that. So, that'd be my recommendation. And then understand that your business is relative to conversations. I give people the formula that every 30 conversations averages one closing, right? So if you go back in time and you say, well, how many conversations did I have in the last 2 weeks? And you say 0. Well, guess how many transactions you got coming up? You got 0, right? So it's relative to conversations. Every day, commit to 30 conversations a day. You said 40, I'd say 30. Right in that pocket, you're going to start to create transactions. There's no question. So it's all about getting out there and talking to people.
Yeah, I have an agent that we interviewed a couple years ago, Stephen Noel, who is out of Colorado, and he's about $1.5 million income guy for 25 consecutive years, Yeah. And he says, basically, I get on the freeway and in Colorado, and he goes, I drive for 30 minutes or so, and I make calls. I get off the off-ramp. I get on the other side. I drive back home. And by the time I'm done, I've made all the calls I need to make today. And he goes, for all intents and purposes, that's my job. He goes, everything else I can hire people to do. He goes, I can't hire people to know me, and it's a beautiful perspective.
I'll give you one more quick idea.
Sure.
For new agents is get connected with local business owners as well. And this is such an underrated strategy, but such a great strategy. And that is going out and just meeting local business owners and saying, hey, my name is Jim. I'm with ABC Real Estate. I'm trying to connect with all the business owners in town. I'm hoping I could exchange business cards with you. I'd love to refer new people that are moving to town to local businesses. And you sounds like you got a great one. Are you the owner? Yes. Hey, do you mind if I, just touch base with you from time to time, kind of grab your card and I'll put you on my little mailing list and just start to connect with business owners. Do some social media around it. Tag the business owner in the social media. They'll appreciate it. And you'd be surprised at how fast you can build out your database that way. And the second thing I'd say really quickly on building your business as a new agent is relocation. This, you got to realize, is 40% of the business in almost every community is relocation business, people moving into or out of your area. So make sure your website, your business card, your marketing has the word relocation on it. It's a game changer.
That's interesting. Very interesting. The use of video, you're using video a lot in what you do. And, it's interesting because years ago I was involved, right out of high school, I got involved with a company called Compact Video. They were brand new, and it was early on when they started producing TV shows with video. And no one wanted to do it in those days. And, the short story is I got involved with it. And so I learned a little bit about editing. I learned a little bit about, the production of it, shooting. And, we used to go out with these cameras, and they would be like a $150,000 camera. Your cell phone is better, at $1,500 today than what they were paying a fortune for. And the idea of not using video today is insane to me.
Yeah. Well, there's studies have done around this. 96% of agents, no matter how much we beat the drum and talk about it and tell everybody they should do it, are still never going to do video. Or if they do it, they're going to be very, very sporadically, and they're not going to do it. So that means if I come into a market that's in Southern California and I'm competing with 25, 50,000 agents in the market, I can eliminate 96% of my competition tomorrow morning if I just start doing video every single day. If I started being consistent with video, I'm only competing with 4% of the market now. And a new study just came out that shows that 85% of sellers and buyers want to work with an agent that uses video. So there you go.
I suspect that they want to work with agents they have a sense of knowing. Yeah. And the video is what gives you a sense of knowing. I used to say, mail is like a newspaper, and phone's like a radio, and showing up face to face is like having a TV show. Which one communicates the most information? And like you, when I started, I sounded 12, and I felt like I had a much better shot if I was face to face. So I was a door knocker, at least you'd have a sense of who I am and my sincerity. If I was on the phone, you'd be looking to see if your child was home to talk to me. So it was interesting kind of thing. Well, so give me some thoughts on how I would use video.
Yeah, so lots of strategies around video. One of the things that we encourage our team to do is to have a video strategy around your listings that are coming soon. So raw, no edit video. Before your professional video comes out, you're going to do a video that says, hey, I just listed this property. It's going to hit the market the next couple of days. Wanted to be a quick walkthrough before we get our professional video out. And people say, well, why wouldn't you just wait for the professional video? Because everybody likes the behind the scenes. Everybody likes to see what's going on. And I'll tell you something else. The behind the scenes videos just in general are an absolute crusher and winner. So you've taken the listing, and the videographer or the photographer or the stager is showing up to the house. Stand there and shoot them staging the house. Shoot them taking photos of the house. Shoot them videoing the house and say, our video's coming out soon. Check it out. We're shooting the video now. And everybody likes that behind the scenes feeling. So
that's a great idea. That's new. No one has ever said that to me before. I think that's a very interesting idea. Just bring some intrigue, bring some interest to the transaction.
Anticipation. Yeah, anticipation. And then the other things, the things that people often don't do with video as well, just really quickly, is if your seller is open to being on video, and more sellers are, is to have the seller record a little video about why they love the house so much that they're selling. We bought the house because we fell in love with the neighborhood. Since we've owned it, whatever they want to volunteer. Have that video at your open house. Have that video in the house that people can say, press play, and they can watch the video of the seller getting kind of a video testimonial of why they want to sell the house or what's so special about the house.
You bring up something that I hate to even touch on right now because it's going to take a minute to do that. But back in the 80s, I came to this conclusion that you just touched on right here. And that is that you're trying to market something, be unique in marketing. And the truth is that, the person that's most likely to buy the house is someone who's going to similarly match the profile of the person who's already bought the house.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So what I want to do is I want to try to sell that lifestyle.
Exactly.
What I wanted. Yeah. And, offline, I'll tell you some interesting stories around this. So that led to me creating a thing that we called LoRa, which is low-powered radio. And what that allows you to do is drive up in front of a house and hear a message about the home. I got a patent on the equipment we did. It's a great story. And what it did for our production would just absolutely blow you away. But what was interesting about it is we never. I learned that the Pulitzer Prize didn't go to the guy Gutenberg. It didn't go to the guy who made the printing press, right? It went to the person who wrote the best story. And so we learned very early that if you don't have a very well scripted a story about the property and with a good voiceover, that it didn't work real well. But I can tell you that in those days we were spending $60,000, $70,000 a month in newspaper advertising, and our increase in ad calls was more with this system than all of our advertising budget together. Just to give you that part.
Incredible.
So the point of it was we never ever gave the price. We never gave how many bedrooms it had. Never. We always talked about, what it was like to live in that house and what the people felt when they first bought it.
Yeah. So give them a reason to call. You're leaving something out. Now they got to call.
That's right. So it's really interesting that you would touch on that. Well, listen, I'm keeping you here longer than you probably wanted, and I appreciate your time. I don't want to let you leave without talking a little bit about two things. One, teams a little bit, because I'd heard you talking about that. And then I want to jump into the new commissions, basically the NAR settlement thing, just for a few minutes. But so let's talk for a second. I heard you talking about teams and the development of teams. And I want you to speak on three things. One is you discussed a partnership with someone who's not a team. Yeah. And then a team where you become the company within a company. You are the lead generator. You're hiring people to work with you. And then the third one really is a team that supports your effort.
Yeah, so a partnership, and I've been a member of a partnership, and I've coached a ton of people that have entered into partnerships. The thing you got to realize about a partnership is that they all end. You're not going to die holding this person's hand, right? You're not getting married to them. So all partnerships end. So what I tell people when you're entering into a partnership is understand this, that the first thing you have to do with a partnership is figure out your exit strategy, and you have to have it in writing. So now I have you think of it like a prenup. I'm going to have my prenup signed. And as a broker, I require it because I'm not going to disentangle your relationship after you guys are all mad at each other. I want that prenup signed in advance, and you guys are going to have a clarity on who gets the listings, what happens to the database, what happens to current escrows, all that's lined out. Second thing is, if you're going to enter a partnership, it all sounds sexy and fun at the beginning, but here's what you should do. If you haven't done this yet, I tell them you got to do a road trip. Road trip is, I say, how long have you actually spent together alone with this person? I know you work together, but have you ever actually gone on a trip together? You're going to I want you to do an 8-hour road trip together. 8 hours one way, 8 hours back, just you two. And I just want you guys to see at the end of that trip if you still want to be in partnership together. And those two things often will shake people like, okay, maybe this isn't the right choice for me. Because I want to shake you because it's extremely rare to find partnerships that actually work because of this. Because one person is generally the rainmaker of the two, and one person is generally the administrator. The rainmaker, if they're splitting the profits or whatever their split is, will tend to build up resentment, and that will break apart at some point. So just be careful of partnerships. The most successful team arrangements are more of a pyramid.
Yeah, let me touch base on this because man, I'm so in agreement with you on this here. And I did the same exact thing with my company. I got to a point maybe 6 years in where I just said there will be no more partnerships. And if you insist, then you'll come in here, you'll sit down, and we'll do exactly what you said. We'll write it all out. What happens to all your clients, your leads, and it's got to be in writing. If you don't want to do it, I'm not going to let you do it. I will not accept transactions like that. And the reason is because I'm tired of being a bad guy, and I'm tired of I don't want to be the referee. You guys are doing this. And the other thing that I found, and this would be to our viewers as well, is that I noticed that the partnerships often stem from a little bit of what you're saying, and that was that they always felt like the other person had some personality plus that they didn't have. And somehow they became perfect matches when you brought them together. This guy was motivated and this guy wasn't motivated. And this guy was good administratively and this guy wasn't. And it's all those things that made them a perfect, two people, a perfect one, was exact same reasons that they end up fighting later because they started, valuing it. So So I agree with you. Second thing then would be the pyramid that you started talking.
Yeah, so the pyramid is like you have this is the most successful, most common structure is somebody's the leader, the alpha. We'll call them the alpha. And the alpha is running a team organization beneath them. So they have buyer's agents, they might have listing agents, they got transaction coordinators, they got administrative people, admin people, social media folks. And so, but they're running the ship. And so the thing about team leaders that people have to understand is that regardless of their production level, their net take home may not be as great as you think it is because they're running an organization and all of that costs money. So if you're thinking about forming a team, I have to understand that, yeah, you might close $20 million, but your net might be the same as a $5 million producer or a $4 million producer at the end of the day, and you're now managing an organization. So just keep that in mind that it's not quite as sexy as you might think it is. Some people are built for it. Some people can crush it.
You've taken on fixed expenses that you wouldn't normally have,
Mm-hmm. The most profitable person or people in real estate is in my opinion, solo agent with one assistant that's crushing it. They net take home more money to their family.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I had a situation where when people come to me about this and I'm coaching them, I have them take out a piece of paper and I have them write down the words one word at a time, and it starts with, "They will break your heart." And I make them write that out because they all believe that they're going to get these team members, they're going to fall in love with them, and they're going to be with them for the rest of their lives, And so it would amaze you how many people have come back and explained their broken heart story to me afterwards.
Well,
so
interesting. I just saw a study about that. The average team member lasts 3 years on a team.
3 years.
New data.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so that's the model where you support yourself. Basically, you have a team that supports your individual effort, and then the other one would be the one that's where you're basically hiring salespeople and running an office within an office.
Yeah, I mean, I see people doing that, and there's a lot of coaching that goes around that. Again, it's just a management role. You're taking on a management role. And the question mark is, what's your ROI on this? What's your return on investment? Because what's happening is you got X dollars coming in, then you got to split it with these agents, and then you got to cover all the costs. So in both the pyramid model and what you're talking like a brokerage within a brokerage, I recommend team leaders, and they're wise if they do it and they're unwise if they don't, to create an operational expense. I call it the OCE expense, operational cost expense. And that is if you take all of your costs of operation, divide it by the last number of transactions you had in a year, that will tell you the operational cost per transactions. So let's call it $1,000. So if I have a $5,000 or $10,000 check that comes in, the first thing that gets paid, taken off the top before any splits, is the operational cost expense. Comes off the top because otherwise the burden is falling all on the team leader depending on which style they're running. So, that's the way I look at it.
Well, I think it's good advice. In fact, in one of the interviews I saw you do, you reminded me of something that we had a parallel on too, and that is that, when I started my company, it came off of having, I was a top salesperson for Coldwell Banker in Southern California. And so, and I was relatively young and so relatively happy with myself. Let's put it that way. I think you used ego, but and then all of a sudden you start a company and you realize, oh my goodness, there's just so much I didn't know I don't know. And then I spent the next 20 years of my life, running so hard to keep in front of stuff I don't know that I was scared most of the time that I was going to do something wrong or trip or fail. And you have the same thing when you build that team.
Absolutely.
And going from one office to two offices.
Exactly.
With a different
2 offices to 3. Exactly. 100%.
Different dynamic, different set of management skills.
Yes.
Well, let's take a couple minutes, if you don't mind, and bring me up to date on your overall perspective with these new changes, the buyer contracts, the non-publishing. You're not part of Northwest MLS where you're at, are you?
No.
Okay.
No.
So they're still publishing, but
they start publishing.
Yeah, others aren't. So how are you feeling about all this?
Yeah, I'm teaching. I've been teaching a class around the country called the broker rep, or the buyer rep mastery class, the buyer representation mastery class. We've been diving deep into this. I taught ABR for 10 years. They credited buyer representative designation. So my personal feeling is as disruptive as this all feels right now, what a lot of people don't realize is that 17 states were already practicing this way prior to the NAR settlement. They had a mandate that they had to get buyer agreements signed. So buyer representation agreements, that's actually something that's good for our industry. It's going to elevate us as professionals to make sure that we have basically a loyalty agreement with our buyers. The scary part about all this is the commissions, right? Because it's now you don't have a guarantee of payment. So that's the big question mark, is how do I convey or have a conversation with buyers around this commission issue? And my take on this is it's all about transparency. And the way I explain it to a buyer is I'll say, listen, you probably have heard there's been some changes around the way that we're working with buyers today based on an NAR settlement that was reached back in August. Bottom line is the only thing that's changed really is that when I work with a buyer, we sign an agreement that says, if I'm able to find you a house that you love, that you write an offer on, that we get the seller to accept, that you get your financing approved, you get your inspections done, appraisal comes back, you get all the way to closing, and you get the keys to the property, that's when I'm paid. That's what that agreement says. And that my fee for my services, and this is where the scary part is, my fee for my services and fill in the blank, 3%, 2.5%, 2%, whatever your numbers are. But that's only a success fee, as I mentioned. And we're going to try to collect that from the seller. Many, many times the seller is going to go ahead and pay that on your behalf. If there's ever a case when they won't pay it, you're going to know that before we write the offer. We can adjust our offer accordingly. We're going to be super transparent. You're going to know in advance going in. There's going to be no gotchas, no uh-ohs, no whoops. You're going to know it all in advance. Now, the advanced version of this would be this, and you and I were probably trained the same way, CRS classes and everything else, in that when we go to a listing and we have a seller receive an offer, a lot of us will do a net sheet. We'll get a net sheet from a title company and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, based on what you owe and what this offer is, this is our estimate of what the net's going to be to you. Are you comfortable with that? And they'll say yes, and now we sign the offer. Now, reverse that out with a buyer. With the buyer, we're sitting down, we have this whole conversation around the fee. I'm going to say to the buyer, now, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, based on this house that you want to write an offer on, I called the other agent. The seller is willing to pay 2% of the 3% fee that we're asking for to represent you. So that leaves a 1% difference. I had your lender, and I'm going to have a close relationship with our lenders, run a good faith estimate. It's going to include the 1% fee that the seller's not paying, all your closing costs, your down payment, everything based on the offer we're going to write. This is the bottom line number you're going to need to come in with closing. Do you feel comfortable with that number? So we're going to do the same thing with buyers, super transparent, no question marks, no gotchas. When we do it that way, I think the buyers will feel okay about it. And that's been our experience so far.
Well, that's good advice, I think. And I think I agree that we certainly have the potential to elevate, the perception of our service, which is probably what got us into this problem to begin with. Is that we've gone the other direction on that. So, and then on the seller side, how are you feeling about? How are you trying to tell people to let the world know that their seller is offering some kind of a commission?
There's a lot of ways to do that. The biggest, I think, there's two ways that I'm finding them that are kind of settling in. One is a Google Forms sheet. A Google Forms sheet is a living document on the internet that you control. And that document could have a list of all your properties and a list of your commissions offered by the seller to the buyer's agents. You attach a QR code to that. You could put that on a flyer. You could email that. You could text that to people and say, hey, here's a list of all my listings and all my BACs I'm offering. And because it's a living document, you take a listing this morning, you add it, you sell one, you take one off, and it can always be changing and adapting. Either that or offices are putting it on their websites or agents are putting it on their websites. So those are like the three biggest methods.
So you don't have a problem, or your understanding is there's not a problem with me. I know that they don't want you to aggregate multiple people into a single website, but to aggregate all of your listings into one site, still okay.
It's still okay. Yeah, NAR rules allow it. And offices can do it at an office level as well. So offices and agents can do it, no question.
Well, I tell you what, I could go a long, long time with you. I really appreciate the time spent with you. And I think you put some good information out to people here. Now, Take a couple minutes, if you will, and explain to me your coaching and how people may have an interest in reaching you about some of that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I've got a coaching program. People can learn more about it by going to realestatecoach.com. We've got incredible brokerage coaching that I do there. I specialize in brokerage coaching, focusing on recruiting and retention and building office culture and profitability. We've got an incredible 2-hour class over there that's absolutely free. People can take. It's what's called Rockstar Recruiting. Highly recommend people go check that out. And for agents, you can come out, check out what we call our Path Performance Coaching, which is an incredible coaching program for agents. You can start it and take it for a test drive for only $1 for the first month. So it's all over there at eReal Estate Coach.
I think it'd be worth $1, Jim.
I think I'm worth $1, right?
I feel pretty certain it'd be worth $1. I do. I do. Well, listen, thank you. We've spent almost an hour together, and it is appreciated. If there's anything I can ever do to help you, please reach out. And thank you again for being part of Ambitious Broker.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you so much.